Hello and welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. I'm Phil Ross, in for Brian Perez, and welcome to this Tuesday, January 30th edition of Pastor's Perspective. Answering your questions this afternoon until 4 p.m. Pacific Time, Dr. Bobby Conway, Senior Pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and host of Christianity Still Makes Sense on the Bobby Cam. And also we have Tony Clark. It's Tony Clark Tuesday. And Tony Clark is Senior Pastor of Calvary Chapel, Newport News in Virginia. And sitting here in the studio with me is Pastor Brian Broderson, Senior Pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Good, guys.
Well, I just feel very privileged to be on Tony Clark Tuesday. You know, it's not every day you get an invite to such a prestigious event, and I'm really thrilled to be here.
Well, this is the week for that. This is the week. You know, we had great playoffs on this last weekend, and so now it's just we're keeping it going here on Tuesday.
Yeah. Tony looks like he could go to the Super Bowl wearing that gear.
Yeah, he looks like a head coach. Definitely head coach material there. Head coach of the K-Wave Wavies or something like that. Hi, Dr. Bobby. How are you this afternoon?
Doing great. Just so thankful. I'll tell you, I shared last week on the radio about a Muslim lady who came to Image Church a few weeks ago. I was in 1 Corinthians 11 doing a message on head coverings.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is bizarre. What am I going to do with this? She comes to the gym where we meet to work out, but the gym was closed. She comes into the service and ends up weeping through it because she was a Muslim for 20 years, lived in Saudi Arabia, was in a polygamous marriage, left Islam. So she went to the gym, ends up coming in a service to hear a message because she felt led to go in there. And my message title was Hats Off. And it was exactly what she felt the needed to hear as a person coming out of Islam. She comes to our women's study at our house the other night. And then on Sunday, she shows up at church again and comes up to us and says that she wants to get saved. And we led her to Christ. So it was just a great weekend at Image Church. And how God took this random text and brought a Muslim in and said hats off. And after she got saved, she goes, so am I now a Christian? She says, when I was coming to church, I was worried, like, am I dressed okay? Do I need to do a special washing or anything like that? Wow. And I thought, wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff we live for, isn't it? I mean, that is
my goodness,
that'll take you through a whole year. Just nothing good,
for sure.
Nothing else good happens throughout the year. You just look back on that and go, okay, that made
absolutely
2024 for us. I love that. Yeah. We had a young lady come to church this week too. That was just so sweet. She'd never been to church in her life.
Whoa.
And she just came and kind of like didn't really know, like I'm not sure what to do, you know. And so she was just met and surrounded by people that loved on her. And you know, at the end she was like, can I get a Bible? I mean, how I can make payments on it if that's what's necessary, you know. So, yeah, you love it.
We got you covered here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people are looking for peace in their life. I run into a lot of people who have just kind of the way their life has gone.
Yeah.
And when they come to church and they find the peace of Christ and being able to hang out with people who love them.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was at Starbucks. You know, I've been criticized for going to Starbucks. You know, people go, don't go to Starbucks. And I'm going, man, I've had different families coming to Image Church because I connect with them in Starbucks. Well, I'm in Starbucks. I might have shared this a couple weeks ago too. This lady comes up to me and she recognized me for being on Pastor's Perspective here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And she said, do you know Phil Metzger? And I said, yes. Well, she actually was under his leadership in Romania.
Hungary.
So basically, he was her pastor, and then she came to church this weekend as well. And I thought, this is so cool. So I sent Phil a picture of the two of us.
That's
so,
amazing.
Small world.
She was from the Budapest church, huh?
She was, from the Budapest church.
Wow. That is phenomenal.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
That is so cool. I love it.
Well, hopefully Phil is going to be on the Thursday program, isn't he? I think this week.
Well, we hope so.
Hope so. Yeah.
Hope
Talk
he
to him.
makes it,
Yeah, this is awesome. And one thing I would like to mention to everyone watching that watches Pastor's Perspective, we need your phone call. We'd love to talk to you. The phone number is there at the bottom of your screen if you're watching us on Facebook and YouTube. The number is 888-564-6173. And listening in your car at home, we also would love to find out what's on your heart and mind. What questions do you have for the pastors? Again, the number to call, the lines are open right now, 888-564-6173. And gentlemen, I wanted to ask you guys about Christian protesting. Over the weekend, this last Sunday, they were first billed as climate activists, but they were actually protesting the fact that French farmers were being undercut by imports, and they wanted more sustainable food in France. And so what these two women activists did is they snuck into the Louvre, brought soup with them, and threw it at the Mona Lisa as a form of protest.
Wow.
Now, we as Christians, when we come up against things that we disagree with, from a political standpoint, what is acceptable protest for us as Christians?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think throwing soup at the Mona Lisa would be anything I would advise a Christian to do.
Okay, like Ravens fans, if they want to protest the pass interference no call on Sunday that resulted in the interception, for the Chiefs, are they going to throw nachos at Washington's painting or something?
I didn't think that was pass interference myself, but of course I was kind of rooting for the Chiefs, so it always kind of goes in direction of the team you're rooting for, right? I think,
true.
Just the idea of peaceful protest that was amazingly demonstrated by Martin Luther King. That was his whole philosophy. And I mean, my goodness, when you think of the brutality that they faced during the civil rights period, the protesters were peaceful. The opposition to the protests were violent, and yet they continued to maintain a peaceful posture, which was extraordinary, really, I think. And I do think that is the way, Christians, we're citizens of the United States. There might be occasions when we do protest, and maybe, I don't know if Christian protesting is necessarily, as a Christian, you might protest something, fine. But I'm just saying, I don't know that hey, I'm going to put out the call to all Christians and let's go protest this. I don't even know that is that great of a thing, or in the end that it's an effective thing. But as a citizen of the United States and as a person in my community, we've had a lot of pot dispensaries open up in our area recently, and some people have gone to protest those kinds of things. And I think pot coming into community like this I don't think it's real beneficial ultimately for the community. So to go out and protest something like that, I can understand that. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Should we put together big protests as Christians? What's your thinking on that?
I don't think Christians can agree on what they agree on. Christians cannot even agree. So it won't be effective because we can't agree on things. You have the majority of the Christian church who will say, hey, let's protest, let's be about the unborn. And then you got another segment of the Christian community that said, no, we need to be about this over here. about racial injustice, and but then you got the ones over here that says, no, we'll be about the unborn, and then you said, well, we'll be about racial justice, and then, well, you're woke, well, you're deaf. So we can't even get along and agree on what we're going to protest. Well, I'm gonna protest Target. Well, why? Why protest Target? Well, because they allow this. Well, Target got some great deals, So you got people, you got Christians that can't even get along. So I don't think any type of protest will be effective unless if it's out there with if I can use the term, the white evangelical community out in California and everything, they can band together because they see a lot of the same things. But then when you look at the Big C church that is worldwide, a lot of them won't see eye to eye on the same things. And so I think it won't be effective like it was, like when you mentioned with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Back at that time, there was a oneness in what they were going to protest, and it was always going to be have something to do with hitting the pocketbook of the side that was doing the oppressing, and it was definitely effective then, but it's just not.
And Tony, even though that was, obviously there was a huge Christian component to that because Dr. King was a Christian minister, and many of the people marching were Christians as well. But it wasn't so much a Christian event. Like, for example, true. Like if you were to say, we're going to go out and we're going to protest Target. All believers come out and protest Target. When it's a call to believers, I think it's a little bit of a different thing in my mind, anyway. But it made me think, though, because of course there was the call to boycott Target a while back, and Starbucks has been. There's been calls to boycott Starbucks, but Bobby has resisted that, obviously. But what I want to say is, I met this young guy. This is a few months back, and I met this young guy in the church. I think he's 21, and we just met and we're talking. And it was really great. He's telling me about, being in school and all of this. And then he tells me he has 2 jobs. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. He's working his way through college. And he says, yeah, I work at Target and Starbucks. And I was like,
wow.
What was I going to say at that moment? Like, oh, you need to quit your job because you can't be a Christian and, shop at Target is bad enough. My goodness, you work there. That's...
Being a godly influence. Well, once again, thank you for joining us today for Pastor's Perspective. And before the callers stage a huge protest, why don't we go to our phone lines now and answer some questions here. The number to call today to ask your questions is 888-564-6173. And now we'd like to welcome Marie from Los Angeles. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Marie.
Hi.
Hello. How are you doing on this Tuesday afternoon?
I'm doing good. I've been better. Right now.
Okay, sounds like you've got a financial question. Is that right, Marie? Go ahead and let us know what your concern is.
Okay. So my husband and I, this is my second marriage, and we both have daughters from our past marriages. However, his daughter is 37 and has allowed her to move into the family home that's available to his family. So there's, lots of room there. So she's living there basically rent-free. And her car was repoed. And she has a job. And, my husband picks up my granddaughter after school because she's always working. So she works a lot, doesn't have a whole lot of time for her daughter. But so there should be financially, she should have the money to pay her car since she hardly pays any rent. But her car got repoed and my husband bought her a car. He didn't even tell me. He just did it. We got married late in life, and so our finances are separate. So I'm just blown away that he did that without telling me. And I just don't understand. He's on a fixed income. He's just retired. Why are you paying her bills if she's working? What is she doing with her money? I mean, my granddaughter's always coming to him saying, Mom can't buy me this. Mom can't buy me that. She has no money. Where is this money going? And I asked him, why haven't you asked her, where is her money going? Why can't she afford to handle her finances? What is going on? And he's taken away from our finances. We need things in our home, but he's dropping thousands of dollars on a car and hundreds of dollars for the things that they need. I just don't get it. And it's starting to really irritate me. And that's coming not right. I don't think that's right in our marriage. And it's really, really getting to me. And he just says, she's my daughter. I'm going to help her. Well,
yeah. So Marie, it sounds like it is a communications issue that you're having with your husband talking about finances.
He's communicating. He's letting me know I'm going to do it. She's my daughter. I'm going to help her. Okay, if you need to help her, if she couldn't help herself, but she does have a job, why can't she pay her bills? We do communicate. He's, we don't really have an issue there, but the fact that he still insists that, I have to help her. She's my child. She's an adult. She's almost 30. I'm not going to say she's in her 30s. She needs. Yeah. I feel that it's time that she steps up and handles her own finances and stop, depending on Dad to bail her out when she's in trouble.
Well, I think an important question, and you've brought it up, and I think it is an important question. Where is your money going? If she's working, like you say, she's working, she's getting paid, but she is broke. Where is that money going? I mean,
he has an ask.
Yeah, and I think that's I understand his position from the she's my daughter and I'm going to help her. I get that. And I have 2 daughters and I want to help them too. But if I was in a situation like you described, where my daughter had a job and her car got repossessed and she had a job but still doesn't seem to have any money, I would certainly want to know, where is that money going? If it's not going anywhere you can see, then it could be going somewhere that's not good. Oftentimes it's going to drugs. I mean, that's what people spend lots and lots of money on many times.
Well, I know she smokes a lot of pot.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm sure it's going there.
I'm sure it probably is. Yeah. So, and I get, and I think anybody would understand your frustration over this, and this is where
I'm the bad guy according to everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not. Well, I'm not a nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes doing the right thing makes you the bad guy. So
I haven't asked her. I haven't asked her. I don't want to ask her because I'm afraid it might come off the wrong way and then cause problems. So I don't ask anything.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, all we're able to do, Marie, is pretty much agree with you. We agree that this is not right. Your husband's not on the phone, so we can't really respond to him. But if he was on the phone, I would say to him, hey, the Bible says you need to dwell with your wife with understanding. And this doesn't seem like he's seeking to do that at this point, that he's dismissing your feelings and your opinion about it. And that in and of itself is a problem. So I would say that, again, we understand your frustration and agree that you should be frustrated. But what do you do at this point? That's the question. So any of you guys got any advice, counsel you want to give to Marie?
I would say perhaps, Marie, what you could encourage your husband to do if he is wanting to be a kind of a Christian husband and operate like a Christian husband. There's a book that my wife and I are taking married couples in our church through, and it's called The 6 Pillars to Intimacy. And it is a short book, and those pillars have to do with sexual intimacy, recreational intimacy, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, but financial intimacy. And that's kind of an interesting topic of choice, but there is a sense where a lot of times couples struggle to achieve financial intimacy. And what is financial intimacy? Well, it's an ability to feel connected and unified around our financial goals, and a desire and an alignment around how we process money, what we do with money, and how we understand money as it relates to giving, spending, and saving. And so that could create some talking points for the two of you. I think you're wise to not challenge the daughter in this situation, because you want to keep that relationship intact. It's kind of like you don't ever want to pit a mother against her son. Like I think about like my mom. My mom is a mama bear, man. Anybody gonna mess with me, it's just not gonna work, right? In the same way, there's that daddy-daughter kind of a deal. That, even as Pastor Brian said, he's like, I got a couple daughters, I want to help them. And I think about my girl in Hawaii, it's the same thing. There's just something there. And I think maybe what you can say is, I appreciate your heart to want to help your daughter out. I know you mean well. I know you're just trying to help. Can we try to maybe have a conversation of what it looks like for it not to come between us? Something like that might be a good conversation. Hopefully he'd be willing to chat about it.
Tony?
One of the things that I sense here, she's around 37 years old. You got married later in life. No doubt we all have daughters here, and we would do what we can for them. But at the same time, there seems to be some history that we don't know right now. Whatever happened with the first marriage and the mother of the daughter, we don't know what happened. The husband could have been a bad guy, or he could have been neglectful, didn't take care of the kids like he should have, and now here it is. He's trying to do what he can to try to make up for those times in the past that he didn't do such a good job as a father. And, there's something that seems to be in the past that no matter what, this daughter knows her dad will bail her out. So something is behind all that. We don't know, nor do we have the time to go into all that, especially if the husband isn't on the line right now.
All right, Marie, thank you for calling in to Pastor's Perspective. If you have a question for the pastors, please call us now at 888-564-6173. And now let's move over to Stephen in Yucaipa calling in with a question. Stephen, welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Hey, how you guys doing? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Hey, so kind of a interesting question here. So my wife and I, we've been married. We just got married in July, and her parents, her entire family are Lutheran. She's not Lutheran anymore. She actually left the Lutheran faith and now attends a Calvary Chapel. I actually worship at a Calvary Chapel here in Yucaipa. But anyways, so with in-laws, obviously, like no matter who it is, they have issues. And we just found out we're having a baby, so we're very excited about that.
Congratulations.
For you guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, as you know, like there for the most part, Lutherans and you'd say evangelical Christians like ourselves essentially agree on the main things, like Jesus is Lord. We're saved by grace through faith. But when it comes to like communion and baptism, there are fundamental differences. I mean, from my understanding, what they've told me, they believe more on the sense of like consubstantiation, which essentially is like it's the actual body and blood of Christ. It's different than what Scripture says, in my opinion. It's more of a symbol. So I really want to know why there's a difference, and like in your guys' thoughts process, like am I supposed to approach them about those fundamental differences? And if so, how do I do that? Or am I just kind of supposed to stay silent in the background? There's different issues like infant baptism and stuff like that, but I'm just trying to, lead my future family well while also maintaining biblical doctrine.
Stephen, the Lutheran Church does consubstantiation. You said consubstantiation, but then you describe transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation, yeah.
So transubstantiation is the Catholic doctrine that Luther rejected. And so what the Lutherans believe is that there is a presence of the Lord there more in a spiritual sense. Like this is a moment where you're encountering Jesus, but not because the bread and the wine are being, actually turned into his body and blood. So with Lutheranism, most evangelicals are going to be looking to Luther for obviously we look to Paul, but, for many centuries, Paul's simple gospel of salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, was obscured through the Catholic Church. Luther's the one who brought that back out into the forefront. And so
the Reformation.
Yeah. So that's why we look back fondly on Luther for that specific thing. Obviously, there were things Luther ended up doing in his life that many Lutherans would not even want to talk about today. And, Christians have to be careful when we talk about Luther, because we have to recognize that he did also do some pretty harmful things in the long run of history, especially his anti-Semitic inclinations and statements that later on the Nazis would borrow from some of the things that Luther said. So, but doctrinally speaking, apart from infant baptism, I don't know that there's an infant baptism. There are many Protestant, obviously Lutherans are Protestants, so there are many Protestants that still do that. Presbyterians do that. Anglicans do that. So this is one of those things. There's a debate over it, but it's not. I don't think it's anything to. You don't want to die on that hill, and
okay. Just
based on what you're saying, I think the bottom line is the family. Are they genuine? Are they genuinely born again? Have they put personal faith and trust in Jesus? Because you can be part of a denomination that maybe holds to orthodox biblical views, but yet not have experienced Christ yourself. So, that would be what I would wonder about.
Tony?
Yeah, just what Pastor Brian said, that you don't want to die on that hill. And what you end up doing is putting your wife in between her parents and you. And then she would have to choose, because there would be this elephant in the room during holidays, and anytime, quote unquote, religion is brought up, there's a tension that's there. Hey, back in my younger days in Christianity and my younger days in ministry, I definitely would have died on that hill. And I would have been bringing it up every single time, and we would have just been at it. But, now I'm like, it's not worth it. It's not worth putting your precious wife in the middle, especially when there's a baby on the way. So you don't want to do that.
Bobby, real quick, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's good stuff right there.
All right, pick your hills that you want to die on. All right, thank you, Stephen, for calling. You're listening to Pastor's Perspective. I'm Phil Ross in from Brian Perez, answering your questions today until 4 p.m. Pacific Time. Dr. Bobby Conway, Tony Clark, and Brian Broderson. Please give us a call. Plenty of time to get your question in. Call 888-564-6173. If you're watching online, you can see it there on the bottom of your screen. And if you're listening at home, please call us, 888-564-6173. We'll be back with more of your questions in just a moment right here on Pastor's Perspective. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. I am Phil Ross, in for Brian Perez. Today, answering your questions, Dr. Bobby Conway, also Tony Clark and Brian Broderson here to answer your questions. The number to call is 888-564-6173. If you're watching online, thank you for joining us on Facebook and YouTube and on our flagship station's website, kwave.com. You can also stream the program there as well. And if you want to submit a question, you can do so on our Facebook page, also on Instagram, and also, again, through our flagship station's website at kwave.com. That's another way to get your questions in. But the best way to get your question asked and answered is to call us this afternoon now at 888-564-6173. And let's go back to the phones now. We've got Brett in Long Beach, and he's got a very interesting question. Hi, Brett. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Well, thank you for having me, gentlemen. I have a question. I run a ministry on TikTok that God's been truly blessing. And somebody asked me a question that somewhat stumped me, and I wanted to call your program and ask it. So their question was, obviously in the Old Testament, sacrificing the animals for cleansing, forgiveness, and Jesus came along and changed that by going to the cross. But their question was, how long did it take for that to be the mutual consensus for Jesus being the forgiveness for sacrifice, or did animal sacrificing continue after the life of Jesus?
Bobby, would you like to handle this one?
Sure. The sacrificial system would end officially with Judaism in AD 70, and that is when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. So if you take Jesus dying in the early 30s, fast forward to 70, you've got, almost 4 decades where a temple sacrifice was still taking place. But the Christians weren't sacrificing any longer. In fact, they believed in Jesus, and they were celebrating, as we talked about earlier, the sacred meal, the communion. They had their love feast followed by a time of taking communion, the bread and the wine, in remembrance of Christ as the final sacrifice. So the book of Hebrews kind of spells this out for us, fulfilling the book of Leviticus in the person of Jesus. And so, yes, the temple, the veil was torn when Jesus said, "It is finished," implying that, the priesthood of the believers has been inaugurated through the new covenant. And yet, even though that veil was torn, there were Jews that rejected Jesus that still went about sacrificing animals until AD 70.
Tony?
At the end, the great doctor said what I was going to say when Jesus in John 19:30, when he said tetelestai, when he said it is finished, he said that he didn't come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. So he fulfilled it at that particular time. And so now, we look to Jesus Christ as the fulfillment of the Old Testament law. Romans 10:4 says, Christ is the end of the law to everyone who believe. And so Christ put an end to all that because he fulfilled it. And so that's why we no longer drag, lambs and turtle doves and rams, to church trying to sacrifice them. Because just like Hebrews 10:4 said that it is impossible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sin. They only covered them. And then next thing you know, when they sinned again, they were marching back down there with some kind of animal sacrifice. But Christ put an end to all of that, just like Romans 10:4 says, Christ is the end of the law to everyone who believe.
All right. Does that help?
That helps amazingly. Thank you, gentlemen. God bless you.
All right, Brett, thank you for calling in.
Hey, bub.
All right, you're listening to Pastor's Perspective. Our number is 888-564-6173. Again, that's 888-564-6173. And now let's go to Debbie in Orange County. Debbie, thank you for calling in to Pastor's Perspective. What is your question for the pastors?
Hi. Yes, I'd just like your perspective on the Seventh-day Adventist church or religion. One of my adult children is looking into it, and I read about it. It's a Protestant faith, but I wanted to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, Debbie, I think you could classify, to some degree, you could classify Seventh-day Adventist as a cult. Seventh-day Adventism is founded by a woman, and her name just slipped my mind. Bobby, what's her name? Tony, what's her name?
Ellen G. White.
Ellen G. White. Ellen G. White, yeah. So it is, it's very exclusive. It's very, very legalistic because they have gone back and embraced the Old Testament dietary laws. And, of course, they believe that the Sabbath is the most important thing, that you worship God on Saturday. There is even a belief among them known as the Sunday Law, where they believe that one day the Antichrist will come and make everybody go to church on Sunday, and that will be the great violation and the great sin if people were to embrace that. And so there's all sorts of problems with Seventh-day Adventism. Having said all of that, there are people who are Seventh-day Adventists who don't take it lock, stock, and barrel, and so they still hold to, a fairly orthodox view of Christianity. But the big issue is always it's a works-based salvation. It's basically you're going to keep the law, and by doing so, you're going to obtain God's favor. So you guys jump in. Anything you want to say? Is that helpful, Debbie?
Yes, it is. Very much so.
Okay.
William Miller discipled a young lady by the name of Ellen G. White, 1844, and that's where they all started. You're right, Pastor Brian. It has to do with going back and trying to keep the law. The book of Galatians is very clear about someone trying to keep the law, as well as the book of James. You offend the law in one point, you're guilty of it all. And Ellen G. White is exalted, above anyone in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They have tried to predict the end of the world, so to speak, no different than Charles Taze Russell in 1914, 1915, and then he died October 31st, 1916. But these groups is all about works-based salvation. You have to keep the law in order to be saved. And the main law that they're making reference to, yes, the dietary laws, but also keeping that Sabbath. They are all about that. You're not saved unless you can keep that Sabbath, which is works-based salvation.
Right. Okay, well, I appreciate your information. And so I'll talk to him about
Debbie,
it.
yeah, why, if you know why is it that your daughter or son, why are they even interested in Seventh-day Adventism?
Well, they work with people that belong to this, and they, my children read everything. So he said it's just going to read the book.
Yeah.
And, but, which I don't have a problem with people reading whatever.
Yeah.
But, and he's not saying he's going to join anything, but I thought, I wanted to get a perspective of some pastors before I looked into things myself, but I thought the more information I have, the better before I talk to him about it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an adult. He can do whatever he wants, obviously.
Right,
but,
exactly.
At least I'll have some information to go on.
Yeah. Bobby, did you ever do any kind of a video series on that? Any, thing with 1 Minute Apologist?
You know what's funny about that, Pastor Brian, is I haven't, and I think we've got about 1,700 videos. But here's the funny thing about this. I've been surprised, having been on Pastor's Perspective with you for, about 5 years now, how many times this question's come up. Because to me, I just kind of thought, who's interested in this? This is like calling up and asking about, should Christians go trick-or-treating or something? Or can they read Harry Potter? It just kind of seemed like a buried issue. But I'm actually surprised. It comes up quite a bit. Yeah. And having heard you say that, I mean, maybe I should do something on it.
Well, growing up, I had some of our family were Seventh-day Adventist. And I remember my dad and his brother. My dad was defending the Catholic Church, and his brother was, of course, the Seventh-day Adventist, which there's great animosity directed toward the Catholic Church from Seventh-day Adventism. So you can imagine how these conversations went, and they usually were accompanied by several bottles of beer as well. So
that always helps.
Yeah, sure.
But and there are plenty of books. Debbie, if you wanted to do any further reading, there are.
Isn't Kingdom of the Cults? Didn't they do? Wasn't Walter Martin, his wife, a Seventh-day Adventist?
Well, here's the thing. Walter Martin was sympathetic toward Seventh-day Adventism, and I don't remember the exact reason, but for that reason, he would not label them as a cult. But others came along later and pointed out that this was an area where Martin just chose to kind of turn a blind eye to it, because the tendencies of the group are very, very cultic. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Debbie, for calling in to Pastor's Perspective. Our number is 888-564-6173. Still have time to call in and get your question asked and hopefully answered. And now let's go to Steve now in Huntington Beach. Steve, welcome to Pastor's Perspective. How can we help you this afternoon?
Hi, guys. Appreciate your ministry, and just want to let you know my wife and I are attending Christ Point City Church, their Bible study on Monday night, just getting blessed out of our socks with John Wang.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
Our beloved John Huang.
Wong, yeah. Being Tuesday, he's usually sometimes on Wong's Day and stuff like that. Yeah.
So anyway, I was there. We were there last night, and after the Bible study, I went up and asked him this question, and he said, "That's a question for Dr. Bobby Conway."
Uh-oh.
He said,
"Thanks, John.
You know this." I'm really looking forward to this. I just reading Exodus. In Exodus 9, it talks about in 9:3, it talks about the plague that was on the livestock, and then in Exodus 9:9, it talks about the boils on the livestock. Now I looked it up, and there's two separate Hebrew words. One's mikneh, and the other is behemah. And I don't know if that's the proper pronunciation, but I don't know what the difference is. Because I thought if all the livestock was killed in verse 9:3, what was left to kill in verse 9?
See, there's a sentence you missed. In verse 3, it says, "Behold, the hand of the Lord will be on your cattle in the field." That's the key right there. Cattle that's left out in the field. That's what a lot of people miss, that sentence by itself. That's right. I let the great doctor take it from there.
No, that's good, Tony. I mean, that is exactly right. I mean, you scope in on that, and sometimes you can, get a lot by just realizing the context where these animals were destroyed and they were left out in the field. So, very good.
Okay.
So is the free-range cattle.
I wonder,
that grass.
Good one, Phil.
I wonder, though, if John is thinking that Bobby did his PhD in boils on livestock in Egypt.
We'll see.
I know, right? Exactly.
Yeah, pastors, where do you stand on boils?
Hey, look, we talked about this before, but Richard Dawkins did his PhD on chickens picking up seed off the ground, and the way their the way their beaks and their necks work together for them to pick up seed. Did you know that, Richard Dawkins? That's his PhD in biology.
You had talked about that before, but the one thing about Richard Dawkins, though, it's just a good example how when he gets out of his own territory, though, he really exposes his ignorance in philosophy. And man, his logical argumentation, by asking questions like, well, who created God? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a logical fallacy he's got a category mistake. And so when you read his book, The God Delusion, it was sad because so many people, in particular young people, bought into that hook, line, and sinker. Yep. And yet it was filled with logical fallacies. It was just really, really, it was an embarrassment to even philosophers who were atheists. They said, this is just embarrassing. He's just totally out of his arena speaking. Mm-hmm. And I go, that kind of is scary. And you know what? It scares me when I think about if I get into ecology or something, there are just areas of absolute ignorance that I will carry the rest of my life. But what scares me the most is when I don't realize areas that I'm ignorant about. And that can be a real scary thought for me because I know I have them.
Yeah.
Ignorant spots.
Well, great doctor, let me also apologize for jumping on that one question. I have it underlined in my Bible here. When I saw it, I said, there it is. No. So let me apologize. Hey. I'm sorry for doing that. The question was directed to you, and I want to definitely apologize for that.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you can do some Hail Marys, Tony, and go to confession. By all means, it's not a big deal. I can handle sharing the load on this program. I love doing it with you guys. Okay. No problem.
You can go to Sizzler and get a steak and pass your cell phone through the two halves of the steak or something like that. You know?
Sizzler? Is that even a place?
Yeah,
anymore? Phil. And Phil is really dating himself.
I don't get out very often, you guys. I'm so sorry.
Their cheese toast, man, at Sizzler, though, I used to love that as a kid.
Yeah, that was good eating right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Steve, thanks for calling in. Now, let's, you're listening to Pastor's Perspective. It's not the Fork Report or anything like that, but this is Pastor's Perspective. The number to call is 888-564-6173. We've got Dr. Bobby, Tony Clark, and Brian Broderson answering your questions this afternoon. Now, let's go back to the phones. We've got Gregory in Laguna de Guel. Gregory, welcome to Pastor's Perspective. What is your question for the pastors?
Thank you, guys. You sound like you're having way too much fun today, and I love that. I love you guys. And I'm K-Wave all day, every day, so just know that. So,
that's great.
Third time through the Old Testament, I got through Kings 1, Kings 2, and I got to Chronicles, and I had to cycle back because I just got to all the name parts. I figured I just better spend more time in Kings. So in 2 Kings 5, the Naaman, the commander of the army of the king of Aram, he hears about, is it Elisha or Elisha, the prophet after Elijah?
Yeah, Elisha.
I might not be Elisha. So he hears about him. He goes, well, maybe I could be healed. He gets the king's blessing. He goes there with just a bunch of gifts and talents of silver and gold, I guess, and 10 outfits. And he goes and, gets the advice to go dip in the Jordan 7 times. He's pissed off. He finally does it at the behest of his, advisors, and he's healed. And Elisha just refuses to accept any gifts and sends him on his way. So that Gehazi runs after him and says, hey, my master said, I should get some stuff. And he gets his stuff, right? And then goes back and Elisha says, where have you been?
It's a good recap, bro.
Yeah, I'm just trying to paraphrase and get it. I know you guys are busy.
You're doing good, man. I'm thinking you ought to be preaching.
That's right.
Good job telling that story.
Tune in tomorrow. Gregory's going to be tackling.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm just blessed beyond belief. And so anyway, he comes back and he turns white as snow as he goes out from there, right?
Right.
So then he sort of disappears off the map for a while, but then I notice in Kings, I think it's 2 Kings 8 or 9, he's back and he's talking to the king about telling the story how Elisha had brought the lady's son back to life, and so obviously he's still in some kind of capacity. In that, is he still as a leopard there? Because there's nothing, I don't see anything clear cut that he is or isn't. Did maybe God have grace on him or whatever, I don't know. So but that was my question. It's like all of a sudden he reappears. I'm like, I thought he was done once he was a leper.
Yeah, that's a good question, Gregory. And I think there's 2 possibilities. One possibility is that it's not chronologically recorded, so that this is not necessarily, following afterward. When you read Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, sometimes the chronology there is a little bit confusing. So that could be it. But I think more than likely what it is that we kind of have one understanding of leprosy, I think, but it was a much broader category. And I think it's the NIV. One of the newer translations translates it like skin disease or something like that, because it's a broader category than just the thing that we think of where, oh no, a person, like in the New Testament, you see people who were lepers who were, they were excluded from society. You read in the Jewish literature, and they had, if a leper approached you and was so many feet away, then you were to go home and cleanse yourself, or in some cases, rabbis said just throw rocks at him, to keep him away from you. Because there was a type of this disease that was really debilitating to the point of even maybe being deadly, but yet that's not always the case. And I think that would probably be the answer to the situation here with Gehazi, that it was not the deadly form of leprosy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's good. We do know that the skin mutations were varied, and we don't always have, the exact wording to describe what's going on. So that requires a little bit of context and trying to feel out what's happening there. And so sometimes it gets lumped under leprosy. And yeah, we end up reading into that, oh, they're hosed. Mm-hmm. But as you said, it might not be. Mm-hmm.
Well, there was leprosy, or as is known more as Hansen's disease. There's the leprosy that had the 3 stages to it: nose disappearing in the second stage, a smell coming forth from them, and then, like in the book of Leviticus, there are spots of leprosy: a spot on the head if you're bald, or a spot on the arm, or whatever. But we know that this leprosy was to be on Gehazi, and not only on him, but on his descendants forever. So I don't think, because like you said, later on, we see him talking to the king. So it could have just been a spot. But we know one thing is that when the leprosy originally attacked him, it was something that was very noticeable. So could that lean more toward the chronology being a little bit out of order? I don't know, but we know that the leprosy did attach to him and his descendants forever.
Okay, Gregory, does that help?
That helped a lot. I could think it could be chronology, and I was curious because he's back in the picture, and he obviously was someone who was, served the king and Elisha. So yeah, that helped a lot. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Gregory. Thanks for that overview of the story of
yeah. Well done, Gregory. Yeah. We've got so many people on the line, but we are almost out of time for today. And so any closing thoughts from you guys as we think back over some of the questions that we looked at today? Any parting thoughts you'd like to impart?
Well, I would just say maybe you tuned in today and maybe this is the first time you're listening. You wonder, who are these guys? What are they talking about? Well, we're answering Bible questions, as you might have picked up on. But ultimately, what we are talking about is Jesus Christ and his great love for us that he demonstrated by dying in our place on the cross. And if we will receive his forgiveness, if we will give our lives to him, he will come into our lives, make us the children of God, give us eternal life that begins today and goes on and on and on gloriously forever.
And there you have it. Thanks again to Dr. Bobby Conway, Tony Clark, Brian Broderson. This is Pastor's Perspective, brought to you by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. See you here tomorrow.